Uh-oh. Right here. Hello again. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a fun one. I'm doing another series review. It's an honest review talking about the things that I liked and I didn't like. Full disclosure, the series that I'm talking about today is one that I've already talked about on this channel. I believe this is going to be the third video that I mention this trilogy, and honestly, I don't care. I love this book series. This channel is mainly for me anyway, so I want to talk about this series just because I love it. So here we are. We get to talk about it again, but today I'm going to be reviewing the Villains and Virtues trilogy. There's 2 additional books that go into this world, but I'm going to be talking about the Villains and Virtues trilogy. I believe that has Thrown in the Dark, Summoned to the Wilds, and then Eclipse of the Crown. This series is just a little bit of background. You are following 2 characters. You've got Damien and Amma. Damien is the son of a demon in this world, and his dad is a demon, and so he's half demon. I guess you want to say his mom was a human, and his quest at the beginning of the book, you find out that he is trying to rescue his dad from a demon prison. He got captured like 20 years prior, and so for the past 20 years he's literally been working on getting him out of this prison, and when we see him, he's finally got a plan and he's about to go execute the plan is where he's at. So that's Damien. He's considered like a villain in this, or like he considers himself a villain in this, but his plan, he creates a talisman that latches onto a host, and it is a complete enthrallment without them realizing that they're enthralled. So his plan is to go and to enthrall the king, captured his dad, and then convince him to let him go. But he's created this thing, and then by a funny turn of events, having people in the wrong place at the wrong time, Amma, the other main character, ends up accidentally getting this talisman inside of her instead. And the only way to get rid of said talisman is to kill her. So Amma does this, she does a good job of kind of convincing him just the way that things go down. He ends up deciding not to immediately kill her, but he decides that she would make a good host for said talisman, so he ends up just trekking her across the realm and taking her with him to try and he's like, I'll kill you later, it's fine. But she's now coming along with him on this quest, and she's not necessarily a villain or anything like that. That's kind of the premise of the series and where it all begins. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free. I made one of these. I had one of these with spoilers, and I think it's fun to catch people who haven't read the series before. So if you're thinking about it, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just giving the premise. All of the information that I just gave, you find out, I believe, in his first chapter of narration. So that's kind of the idea. This book, I would say, or this trilogy, has a spice level. The first 2 books, I would comfortably say like a 2 out of 5. Little glimpses and kisses mostly, but there's a lot of innuendos that I personally think are really fun. And then the 3rd book has some spice. So I would say like 3 out of 5. Nothing crazy, not a lot. It feels very well earned. Very easy if you are not into that kind of a thing. You can skip those chapters, yada yada. It does curse. It's a little spicier, but not anything super crazy in terms of that goes. So that's kind of a little bit of background as far as the story in general. Things that I really liked about this book, and I've said it before, I'll probably say it again, I am a super character-driven person. If the chemistry between 2 main characters is good, I'm probably gonna love the book 1,000 times more. It doesn't matter how big the whatever war or conflict is, it doesn't matter like what the main characters look like. I feel like in my head, if they've got the chemistry and you can feel that, I'm gonna love the series so much more. And Damien and Amma are so fun to watch them just quest together. I feel like it's just like people need to take notes about how to make this chemistry work. They need to read the series and they need to take notes. We always talk about banter, we talk about yearning. I feel like this is slow burn romance and an enemies to lovers romance done correctly. I feel like it all felt so authentic. It was really easy for me to root for both characters, even though there's some morally gray situations going on with the main characters and even other characters as well. I just feel like everyone that was in the story deserved to be there, and there was a complexity to them that made it feel very raw and authentic, which sometimes you can tell that like book characters are literally just written in for this one part of the plot. They kind of serve their purpose, a little one-dimensional type of a thing, but I feel like every character that was in here, it would be so easy for the author to do just so many little backstories for all these characters. And I would read them. I would genuinely read them because I think I would have so much fun with it. Another thing that I really liked about this, and this seems kind of silly, but I loved the chapter titles. The first time I read, so I've read this a few times now, it's become a little bit of a comfort read for me. The first time I read it, I didn't even pay attention to the chapter titles. I could not be bothered. I was just so engrossed in what was going on that I was just like, okay, next chapter, move on. The second time that I read them, I actually stopped and read the chapter titles, and I already knew what was gonna happen in those chapters. Like, I knew the plot at that point, and they're hilarious. They're so fun. And I wish I had had the joy of reading that before reading the chapter. So if you choose to read this book, please pay attention to the chapter titles because they're really fun and they're very clever. Another thing that I really liked about this, I think it was on a Reddit thread, someone described this as like a D&D campaign just put into a book. And now I can't unsee it. And I'm not super big into D&D, but my brothers are. We had like a family game going for a while, and just like the random nature and just like the hilarious aspect of like, well, that's not what I expected, or like they definitely rolled a 1 in this moment. That's all I can see now when I'm reading this book, and when things happen I'm like, oh, there it is. And there's also like I said, I'm not super into this world, but my brothers are, and I've heard enough about it. I can tell that she's making little jokes and kind of pointing out little Easter eggs for those who will know what they are. Ever since I've heard it described as that, it's done nothing but make the story even funner for me, because I imagine, I don't know, maybe in some world that's how the story came about, was they were like doing something like a campaign, and it just makes it funner for me to imagine that. So who knows if that's actually what happened or if that's actually what the author was inspired by, but now that's all I see, and it made it all the better. The last thing that I wanted to talk about and things that I really liked was the script and the editing. I feel like there was a very tight script. Everything had a purpose within this story, and it all came to fruition in the end. Everything pays off. The editing was phenomenal. Nothing took me out of the world, as far as the writing and the editing went. Sometimes I'll notice little things and it's like, why is the author doing it that way? Or why is this edited this way? Or maybe I'll notice like a spelling error here or there. None of that. I was just totally engrossed the entire time. So I feel like it seems like such a small technical thing, but it does make a big difference. And I feel like just the story was really well done. You can tell things were planned out. Things that were said in book 1 came to fruition in book 3. And so overall, I just feel like everything was really well done. So things that I didn't like, for the first 30% of the first book, it gets a little wordy. And that's like your first introduction into this world. And there's a ton of world building that happens, which again, all pays off later. Like, I'm glad it happens, but for that first 30-ish%, I read it on Kindle Unlimited, so that first 30% of the first book, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, my head hurts a little bit because of all of this and just the way things are worded. It was a bit much. I do know there are a few people that I know that kind of deterred them. They tried to read it and then we're kind of like, this is too much, I don't think I'm gonna like it. But for those people that I do know that pushed through it, they ended up loving it. They read the rest of the series, and after that, like, I don't think that's an issue later on in the series. It's just kind of that first little bit. Another aspect that doesn't personally bother me, but I have heard some people say this, where because it's a rom-com, it doesn't always take itself super seriously, which I personally don't mind. I like those lighthearted books, especially if I just read a super heavy book with a lot of these heavy themes and darker themes. I like a book that doesn't take itself super seriously, but still gives me a good time and a good story. But there are some people that is a negative for them if it's a rom-com and it doesn't take itself super seriously. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is that I really liked how this series talks about some, I'm not gonna say like heavy topics, but there are some darker themes within the story, but they're wrapped up really well in this fun time. And I feel like some of the best stories will explore a lot of deeper themes, but wrap it all up in an amazing story. Things that come to mind in other mediums, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, there are some pretty incredible emotional themes that are buried within that story, but they are wrapped into a fun superhero experience, right? Some of the best stories do that for me, and I feel like this is one of them. You explore what is good, what is evil. You're exploring themes. There are some themes of abuse, and there are some, what does it mean to love somebody, things like that. So you get a lot of that, but it comes in the package of a rom-com, and you are still having a good time and you're enjoying it. It makes you think. So I think that is also a really good thing. Just to finalize this, I would rate this book. You're gonna think I'm crazy, but I would rate this book a 5-star. This is a 5-star book for me. Everything that I kind of touched on, for the most part, it's all positives. There's just like one tiny little detail for me, but for the most part, this book made me laugh, it made me cry, and sometimes because I'm a crybaby. The chemistry was top-notch, the writing was top-notch. So to me, this is a 5-star read. I've recommended this to family and friends alike, and I will probably be continuing to do so. So those are my thoughts on Villains and Virtues. If you're questioning it, you should do it. It's on Kindle Unlimited, it's very easy to access. It's an indie author, so I say go for it. Give it a shot. It's not gonna do you any harm. So that is the Villains and Virtues trilogy. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. Please subscribe. Anything that you do to interact with this channel helps me out a ton, just to help other people see it, help me know which types of videos you like me to make. So I will see you next time. Thank you.